And I think, wait a minute. Well, thought I could make it full screen, but I was fooled again. But we'll go with it as is. 온도제 창첸 엘로나로다운 말바밀라 조제감보바 두손세자 운겐가마바 제지중에 규바제난담 Jitaksasun Palendrupaso Sablan Chagya Jelana Nyebe Nyame Drogon Dabo Gagula Soa Debso Gagula Manam Yupasino Nanda Jingilo Shenlo Gongi Kanga Sombajen Zeno Kula Chaje Me Badam Sedi Duda Jope Gonchela Nye Kujenba Me Ba Jingelo Mogu Gongi Go Wo Son Ba Jin Mena Tego Gebe Lama Yundu Soa Debe Gonchela Chomi Mogu Gewa Jingelo Yeme Gongi Noji Sombajem Gangcha Dope No Somade Majo Deka Jope Gonjela Gonja Loda Rawa Jingelo Nando No Jogo Sambhajan Chiyamayin Chiyan Jawala Magaropa Chawe Gonjela Korde Yeme Topa Jingelo Kewa Kundu Yanda Lamadang Rame Jugi Pala Long Jim Sadalangi Yonten Lago Dorje Changi Gopanyo Dosho Dorje Changi Gopanyo Dosho Sangi Chudan Sogi Chunala Jiangzhi Bardu Dagni Kyabsu Jim Dagi Jinso Gibe Sunangi Rula Penji Sangi Drupashu Sangi Chudan Sugi Chunala Jiangzhi Bardu Dagni Kyabsu Jim Dagi Jinso Gibe Sunangi Rula Benji Sangi Drupashu Sangi Chudan Sugi Chunala Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyasu Chim Dagi Jinso Gibe Sunangi Rula Penchi Sangi Drupasho Kaldin Sawe Lama Rinpoche Nagi Chiwo Ede Denju La Kadrin Chimbo Gongne Jesun De Kuzun Tugi Nondro Sadu So Duzan Bajen Je Kuzutan Zavan 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 Maji Mana Zaman Giniba Jinji no Okay, hi everybody. So I returning to my Karme Ling commentary of with Rinpoche's teaching on the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. And my hope was to do one class per session, but I think we're in our last session and we've got two to go. But they're a little briefer this time. Rinpoche's section on karma is quite short, but what I'll say before I go on that is that generally the explanation of karma results in actions. One kind of standard is that there's an explanation given in general. First, I'll go with kind of what I'll consider like the vague thing that sometimes gets said, and vague in the sense that it might not answer a question. Is that a lot of times teachers say, well, only a fully enlightened Buddha could understand let me phrase this first. First of all, as Buddhists, we accept cause and effect, cause, results, cause, conditions, and effects. And that starts with just the general idea of the four thoughts that turn the mind, the Four Noble Truths. Because if we look at suffering, we're looking for the cause of suffering. And if we're looking to see if there's a way to, you could say, to create cessation of suffering so that suffering doesn't, in other words, though it has a cause, it would be like, cool, can we stop the suffering? And it's to create a different cause, and that's the path in brief. And so the Buddha Dharma is predicated very much on the idea that everything has a cause, and therefore and anything with a cause will create a result when the conditions come to it. So there's a lot of discussion on that. There's some pretty good analogies we could get into. What I was saying a minute ago is this idea that when we start to ponder that and say, well, gosh, what is going to be the result of a specific action that I've had, a good action or a bad action? Or what is something, let's say something good or bad happens, and someone will say, why did that happen? And we start to ponder it. Where do we go from that? So the thing that could sound like I was saying the word vague in terms of not answering the question, but it still tells you a certain something, is that only a fully enlightened Buddha, a perfectly enlightened Buddha, the term Samyak Sambuddha actually is the Sanskrit that can see with complete clarity all karmic actions and results. So, I mean, in other words, for us, it's pondering, but for someone like Buddha, it's very clear. Now, why is that important? It's important because on one hand, you could walk away from it with where I was using that word vague, like, well, that doesn't really tell me anything. It tells me that the Buddha knows something, but I don't know what to do with that. But fortunately, the Buddha taught on it. And there's a number of things. I mean, for everything from the Vinaya, simple Vinaya, all the way to full, monastic Vinaya, that explains things to do and not do, things to take up and actions to relinquish, and mindsets to encourage, mindsets to relinquish. But a general basis on karma is that virtuous thoughts lead to happiness. Virtuous actions lead to happiness. And non-virtuous thoughts lead to more suffering. And non-virtuous actions lead to suffering as well, for ourselves and for others. It's interesting, when you do an action, it goes out into the world. And when we just think of something, it stays with us. So on one hand, we can create suffering or happiness in our world and around us, or as well as, happiness or suffering inward within us. And quite often both. And then further, the Buddha went into it to explain, one of the more commonly, stated explanations. I mean, it's not the only one, but is the 10 non-virtues and the 10 virtues, which we can discuss if we want. But in brief, there are guidelines that the Buddha said. If you kind of think, if you use your body, speech, and mind in some ways, virtuous ways, there will be happiness. If you use it in non-virtuous ways, there'll be suffering. And if you use them in ways that are kind of mixed up, variegated, kind of, what did you call it? Maybe vacillating between virtue and non-virtue, or you could say even like ambivalent or ignorant, then like you could have uncertain kind of things too, or a range of results, all these kind of things. So we'll dive into the text. Rinpoche says, the third of the four thoughts is the thought of the results of actions or karma. You may think, well, I know I'm going to die, but after I die, surely I will be reborn as a god or a human. A very favorable situation. You may think this way, but it is not necessarily the case. After your death, you will have no control whatsoever, no freedom from choosing your rebirth. You will be blown about by the winds of karma, like leaves blown about by the wind. If you have accumulated virtuous actions, and if for some reason you wanted to be reborn in the lower realms, you could not. And if you have accumulated negative actions, although you wish to be born in the higher realms, you will not. So in other words, if you have it doesn't matter what you wish, it matters what you've accumulated. Third, at the time of death, I will have no freedom. Actions are those things of mine that I have done. The point here is that you have no freedom or conscious control. When we die, we like right now, we have a margin of control of our lives. I mean, our minds may or may not be something we can control with like meditation, and I say may not in the sense that if we give rise to kleshas, they can overpower us, for example, like negative emotions can overpower us. But to some degree, we have some agency, volition, control of our situation now, our mentality, our state of mind, choices in what we do. not total control. We're often limited by everything, in our situation, our body, our resources, the things we were talking about before, with precious human birth, actually. But we have more freedom than we give ourselves credit. But the problem is our habits aren't necessarily freeing. So we squandered our freedom. It tapers, actually. And as we get older, our bodies are less capable. Our resources are more spent. Our time is more it's more brief. We have, no matter what it is, we have less time, but it's oftentimes quite spoken for ahead of time. Like our decision, our responsibilities pile up. We're kind of already spoken for by the time we have any free time. And then, of course, at the time of death, our resources don't matter. At a certain point, it won't matter how much money we have, because our state of our physiology will be beyond that, and our it won't matter. Gosh, like I said, our resources, our wealth, our influence, what we wish we could do, we won't have much option. So it's the kind of thing where all that's left with this is our state of mind that we carry in our consciousness, between this life and the next, and the imprints that are in our state, in our consciousness. Since negative actions will cause you to experience rebirth in the lower realms, then, as the text says, I must abandon wrongdoing. So, because our thoughts and our actions and our words leave an imprint on our mind, then we have to be attentive about, and you could say, have vigilance about that, because of the fact that the things we do make an imprint. And actually, we can have an aside about that in a little detail in a second. This means to admit, confess, and renounce as fully as you can all of the negative actions of body, speech, and mind that you have ever done, and to commit yourself from this moment onward never to perform them again. So we have to kind of be a good gardener, like we have to kind of we have to keep account for ourselves and see what kind of imprints are in our mind, what habits we have, what is making an impact on our state of mind, and begin to distinguish and remove the negative, and not do the negative actions, the things that have the negative imprint, and of course increase the ones that do. However, there's an interesting point about karma that Rinpoche taught in other occasions, and I'll share it here. It's this part, it has to do with this idea of the imprint part. So, because when we're talking about state of mind, there are some elements that come together. We're always doing things, right? But or always. So the idea is you have to, for full karmic impact, you could say, like fully blown karma, you have to have several aspects. You have to have the thought of doing something. That's the first one. You have to think, well, I'll do something good, I'll do something bad. Those thoughts come up. Or so you have to intend to do something. Now, you might not label it good, you might not label it bad, or you might label this is a good thing, and then later think, oh gosh, that was a very bad thing. It doesn't matter what you label it. It's just the idea of saying, I'll do this. That's the first one. The second one is you have to try to do it. So sometimes we think about things but don't do anything about it. Like, in other words, this is the part of us that has we make an attempt. We kind of say, like, yeah, like, I'll, not only is it a good idea to do something, but I'll actually make plans to do it. And so you enact it, whatever that could be. Now, that's interesting because some things are quite easy to enact, almost like you could do them thoughtlessly, right? And then some things take great schemes, like, to do. Like, I mean, good things with great schemes, bad things with great schemes. And then some things are like, you think you do, and it's like, that could be bad. Or it could be you think you do, and you just did something really good. So you have to think it, and you have to enact it, like to make it happen, do it. And the third one is it has to succeed, And this is interesting because if you try something and it doesn't succeed, even if it's negative, right? Or even if it's positive, if it doesn't succeed, it doesn't occur as you attempted, then its impact is significantly different, right? Like, I mean, in other words, there's a difference, we would say, in society between like attempted murder and murder. Both very bad, but one is like has different consequences, right? Or like if you attempt to help somebody and it doesn't work out, it's very different than if you attempt to help someone and it does. Like, so again, I'm giving virtuous and non-virtuous, but so now it's the thought, the effort to do it, and then it's success. It changes the sphere of what happens. And then lastly, the last one is our mentality around it, if we rejoice in it and how we rejoice in it. Which for virtue, if you rejoice in virtuous deeds, I mean that's one of the that's in the seven branch prayer. It's good to rejoice in virtuous things. Of and it like I'll quote the seven branch prayer. It says, Shravakas, it's like Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Shravakas, Pacheka Buddhas, and ordinary beings. So like when we rejoice in the good things that others do, you create merit, you create virtue. And even ordinary beings, beings who aren't Buddhists, beings who aren't vegetarians, or beings that don't always seem good. If a person does something that you identify as being a good deed, then and it's virtuous, then if you say, yeah, that's a good thing, even if it's a bad person, strangely enough, if a bad person does something good, it's okay to rejoice in it. Like a person that we identify and you could say largely categorize as bad, if they do something good, then they're actually doing something contrary to the rest of their difficult character, right? So it's actually worth rejoicing in virtue. But if we rejoice in non-virtue, particularly, like, so in other words, if we thought of something, attempted it, it succeeded, and now we rejoice in it, this is why it's so important, is because it locks in our sentiment about it. It takes the impression of it and really locks it into our mind. Like, that was a bad thing and I don't give a damn, or that was a good thing and I think it needs to happen more in the world. It's a beautiful thing and there needs to be more of it. So does it make sense that there's kind of this framework actually around actions? Now it's interesting. We don't think in those terms all the time. We just do stuff because, like I was saying, habits, right? Like, but there actually is a framework to action. What we do with our body, speech, and mind, to the things that we do, and that's the karmic framework. Um, I don't know. I when I had that broken down for me, I thought it was great, and I think it makes a difference on this subject a bit, because there is a lot of detail to good, and it, even though, like I said, a lot of times we're doing things by habit, doing them thoughtlessly and fast. Like, there's still elements that we can begin to parse out, take apart, and work on little aspects of them. Like maybe our bad habits aren't overwhelmed, but maybe we don't rejoice in them anymore. Like that's a huge step. And then if we slowly start telling ourselves to like follow through on, like I was saying, something has to succeed. If we don't follow through on negativity, that's much different than if we you could say have a if we're diligent about our negativity, or like, what's that, like tenacious, yeah, about our negativity. And then similarly to like virtue, if we really say this is hard, but it's good, and we follow through on it, that's good. And there's a lot of great Buddhists I know who are spiritual people, even, who do good things, but don't really give themselves credit much. They're like, I'm just not good enough. One day I'll be good enough. But they're doing good things. Like, it's important to rejoice in what we do, to dedicate, and by rejoice, I'll also say dedicate the merit. Like, because when we do something good, we have to dedicate it to bodhicitta and to beings, and to the enlightenment of ourselves and others. And when we do that, that's parallel with rejoicing in this context, at least. And yeah, so I mean, these are important things to think about with virtue and with non-virtue. The text continues. It says, I will pass my time continually in virtuous actions. kind of a commitment. This is all referring to the Nundro prayer. So that's a statement. It's like, kind of a commitment. You're saying, I will do this. You also commit yourself to using the rest of your life, all your time, in the practice of cultivation of virtue, because you recognize that this will decide where you are reborn, and doing so will benefit yourself and others, and eventually cause full awakening of yourself and others. When he says commit yourself for the rest of your life, it's commit yourself to it in terms of a path. I mean, obviously, if you are very like cold turkey, like that's the best. But I mean, like habits run deep, and like it's not always easy to like and in fact there's probably a lot of habits yet to be examined with us, each of us, that we'll see through our meditation and our practice, and through examining our karma. We can talk about that too, examining karma, if we have time. The fourth line says, thinking like that, each day I will scrutinize my being. Well, that's it. Scrutinize our being is kind of this idea of examining our karma. This means that recollecting karma and the results of actions every day, you must consider this to see what you are actually doing. Are you engaging in negativity? Are you allowing kleshas to take hold? Are you being lazy? And this way, you have to become your own teacher. So you have to keep your own court, like be your own counsel a bit. And this is important, in some sense, because if we talk about outer conduct, like our, things we do with our body and speech, people can kind of see, like if we've got rough speech, or if we're, aggressive with our body and things like that, and people will see that, but they won't see our minds. So it's like important, but what happens in our minds matters. So like I'd say that, like, and especially if you're hanging out with other Buddhists, like everyone might be on their best behavior, but might not be on their best mentality. Like, I mean, I'm saying, like, if you live close within each other, and it's meaning like we're usually pretty well behaved when we're in groups, but we still have to keep a track on our mind, I guess is my point. Like, I'm not saying that we're awful or something, but my point is that, like, just because our behavior is kind of screwed down doesn't mean that like our work's over, because we have to work on the inner level too. And yeah, there's a lot to be done there. So that's karma. Unless there's questions real quick, but samsara is actually quite short in this. I mean, because we've already talked about some of it, but were there any questions thus far that anyone had, or statements or anything like that?
I had a
Lisa,
quick question.
for
Yeah.
sure.
So if you stop somebody from doing something bad, would that reduce their effect of their karma? Like if they actually went through with it, would they have worse karma than if you stopped them from doing it? Because their intention was,
If they succeed in doing something, yes, then
yeah,
they have
okay,
more negative karma. If you
yeah.
stop them, then you've stopped them from enacting it, and therefore
Mhm.
they can't rejoice in it, and they can't enact it. However, if on the inside they're like, damn, Lisa got in my way of, like, me being naughty, and now I can't, like, if their mentality doesn't change, then it's still not, you could say it's still not perfect. In fact,
Yeah,
there's a risk you could always get, like if someone's like, man, when Lisa's not here, I'm gonna act even crazier, it's and act even worse. So the idea is that, yeah, I mean, it's preventing a great deal of karma, but at that stage, not we could presume it's still unclear based on their mentality, right? It's still uncertain. But good luck. I hope so. I mean, I hope, sometimes someone stops us in our tracks and we look at ourselves like, man, what am I thinking? But then other times, people, we've merely prevented something, but haven't, ultimate, relatively prevented something, but not completely. Ah, Sue, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question in the other way. We had some fire ants in the yard, and I wanted to get rid of. I didn't really want to kill them, but I had to kind of get rid of them. They were where the kids were, and I could have had our handyman do it, but I didn't want to ask him to do it. I felt like I should take it upon myself rather than to ask him. I mean, how does that work? Where it wouldn't have really bothered him, it wouldn't have been a big action, but I felt like I was initiating it. So
Yeah, I
I felt
mean,
like it was,
interesting one because like monasteries occasionally have like infestations of stuff. You know what I mean? Like just I mean anything. It could be cockroaches or mice or something, and
mhm.
like do and like um different times throughout Dharma, I've heard all sorts of different things. Like we're not going to do anything, or we're going to do something and say prayers and all sorts of stuff. Um, and this sounds like a weird double standard, but I'll say this. First of all, there is karma. Like every action, like we were saying
Mhm.
before, has an effect. And like taking the life of another being is taking the life of another being.
Yeah. Mhm.
It does, there's things that like wider explanations say like it shortens our lifespan in future lives. It might shorten our lifespan in this life, like like going, but it's but it's also interesting because like I mean and actually as weird as it sounds like fire ants can sound very benign to some people but they're not to others like strangely enough my mom like is highly allergic to them like just like the people who get the bee stings like and have to get a pin just a weird odd fact I mean for her that's like getting bit by a snake maybe or like it's a little weird like sometimes um at the same time, because I brought up the monastery analogy, like when it happens at monasteries, this sounds so weird. It's important that monastics not do it because they've taken vows not to do it, right? Like we've taken vows to not take life, but then there's like sometimes when those vows are given, like in refuge, there's like fine print, like too, like a little bit, like it's not saying you like someone might say you don't take life means you don't take kill humans. Like if you really double down and ask the teacher, they might clarify it. And they might say, but it's okay to you don't have to be a vegetarian or so, you know what I mean? Like it really depends on the reason I'm pointing this out is because there's generalized views about like actions and the results and it's different if you have a vow like if you vowed not to do something and you do it it's the same thing we're saying about that I was saying about the intention at the beginning and rejoicing at the end like if we said I'm never going to do something and then we do it we've created a habit of uh not making good on our word and then also a habit of like overlooking some non-virtue. So a little bit of it is I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. Like in other words, if you say
I felt like I didn't want him to get the bad karma. I mean, that was my motivation.
that's at least someone that's on your
Yeah.
side too.
Yeah.
I mean as well. And I actually heard someone say something interesting. Like I usually really can't stand Buddhist dialogue online, like chat groups, comment sections, and like Reddit type stuff. Like, everyone's got something to say. But someone said something really eloquent the other day about something about ethics and about vows. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm chewing on it. He said, this is not like rules for children. Like Buddhism is not exactly rules for children. It's guidelines for adults. Meaning like the distinction between it's not so much like and now it can be for people with certain vows like the monastic vows if you break them they're broken and that's why they're so heavy duty whereas the Mahayana vows are very much like reparable if that makes sense in other words like because they're so broad and vast like I will benefit every being under all circumstances from now until forever that's hard to do and so today you might be cheerful about it tomorrow we might be grumpy and so then and even like a little backwards you might yell at somebody or do something that's not exactly in the direction of helping them towards enlightenment and then what do like you can't just give up the project that easy so we have to repair it and continue to move forward so Mahayana has this weird gray area in realism But I think the idea is that if I'd say avoid when you can, and if you really can't, I mean, like, then it's always fair to say prayers, and certainly the idea of avoiding others' involvement, and especially around anyone's vows or real considerations. You know what I mean? And you do the best you can. But I will also throw something out conversely. Like, I remember talking, I am a vegetarian, and I've been one for a very, very long time. And I remember hanging out with one of my friends who was like a really holy roller vegan. And he was like, because I'm this level of vegan, this person really said this. And he's not an idiot. He's like a physics professor at a major university. He he said, they were much younger. He said, I because of how my eating choices, I mean, I'm making him sound foolish on purpose because it is putting the context that I don't harm any beings. And the fact is that's impossible from a Buddhist point of view on karma, just by being alive under all circumstances, not just if you said, I'm going to kill some ants in a yard, but like just being alive, we're guaranteed to harm others. It's a complete guarantee. And in fact, if you study it hard enough, like, I mean, we're doing way worse than ants in so many regards. Like everything from like our digestive system is, you know, harming beings to like massive consumer choices. I mean, it's like it's not just like the food we eat. It's like iPhones get mined, and like the technology I'm using right now, and like my comes from like child labor effectively, like mined in other countries. And like not that like me using it for a Dharma class excuses but at the same time, that's one of the better uses I've done with a phone or a computer. But the fact is, it's like everything entangled in the world is if you look at most human mentalities and actions, I mean, I remember Rinpoche saying things that amounted to this, and it's quite overwhelming to think about, but it's like everything we do is basically like conventionally. Everything that's not Dharma that we do conventionally is either wrongdoing or just tuned out. It's ambivalent. And that's why Dharma is so important. Because like we are kind of bound to, I mean, it's part of samsara. Like we're going to harm other beings. I mean, sometimes with choices, sometimes like we tune it out. I think that's what a lot of modern living is. Like I said, the example with me in the Apple technology that I'm using right now. And it's not to and I'm not, it doesn't make me any better to point out how bad Apple is, right? Or something like that. That doesn't change anything. And yet those conversations, that's some online stuff for sure. But the issue is like if we dedicate little actions all the time and big actions towards like may beings not be harmed, may beings be free, over and over and over, like some situations aren't like this. Some situations in our lives are favorable to where we're able to, you could say, make a difference for a friend or relocate an animal. Or like, I mean, there's other things we can do that are just, you could say, a parallel opposite. Like if you're on a walking trail and there's caterpillars, you can move the caterpillars, so that the next walker doesn't step on them. And sometimes there's hundreds of caterpillars, and that's just a different kind of walk, and or you could relocate, like, or if a bird falls out of a nest, like sometimes you can call animal places and they can come and care for the animals. And there's all sorts of things like that. In fact, in there's a famous purification prayer called the 35 Buddhas, and it says like, whatever virtue I have from just feeding wild animals grain, like this idea where we just feed ducks in a pond or feed birds. It's like they're wild animals that don't have any guarantee of food, so we can just do something little like that that's nice. And it might be kind of also something that we shrug off, like, yeah, like I was saying earlier, we might not rejoice in it. We just think it's simple, like, not some big heroic act. But for that animal, for that day, that's plenty. That's quite nice. That's a win. And so like the point is to, and I didn't mean to bring it so dark, so deep. Usually you can just talk about like the virtuous deeds and the non-virtuous deeds and the thoughts and stuff, but really, I mean, when you crack it open, like most of what human experience is, I mean, that's, well, actually, I don't even have to really teach about samsara if I bring that point up, because most of it is just us becoming more and more stuck, and that's what the water wheel analogy of samsara is, like, because it's so easy to practice non-virtue, and so I'll say habitually hard to practice virtue. Actually, Vajrayana and Mahayana make it so easy actually to practice virtue, because the Hinayana is a lot about not doing things. Like, I won't do this and that, and I'll control my meditation, and I won't bounce around in the world and bounce into others. But the Mahayana is actually saying, like, I wish I could help. I wish I could help. I wish I could help. I see a way I can help. It's kind of like that. And the Vajrayana also has so many skillful means, like, that actually train our mind, that are without much effort. And that's important because, like I was saying a minute ago, it's so the way our minds are trained as samsaric beings is it's so easy to do harmful things and so easy to do non-virtuous things, or just ambivalent things, negligent things. We're really trained to it. And it's quite challenging, or at least we're not trained towards it. So it's not so easy. It's not something the world encourages. It's not something we've been trained in to benefit others. So that's what the practice is. All of practice is about just finding little ways to help and avoiding what we can. But it's part of samsara is that, I mean, it could be the kind of thing where you're like, man, going back to just answer your question simply, it could be the kind of thing where you're like, I guess I got to do this. I won't pay someone else to do it, and I'll just do it. And I pray that I never have to do it again. And I pray that somehow those beings are free, and dedicate mantras to them. And it's better to do it sad than it is. There are people, and this is a simple one too. Like, I remember kind of, people I mean, the difference of people who rejoice in those kind of quagmires too, like, damn ants, fuck them, kind of like, like, I'll show them. There's that mentality comes up for people, like it, and it's very different than if you're like, I really wish I didn't have to do this. That alone is very, very different. But actually, I thought of a good funny joke, if you're down, is that but what if you don't succeed? What if the ants persist? So I'm making a little light there. I might as well. It's a hard situation.
Then they become those damn ants.
Yeah.
But even after that, I mean, I thought a lot about it, and I thought I could have gotten a shovel and just like took the whole bunch and moved it. So in a way, I kept thinking about it. So I kind of came up with other ideas after the fact. So for the future,
It's not lime. There is some things you can put on the ground that no, it's good for pollinators, but it's not good for ants and things like beetles, because they eat it. Diatomaceous earth, that's what it is. It's good for, but it's not good for ground crawlers. It kills them. Some people put and I don't know if this kills hornets or and ants, or it simply causes them to migrate. But some people use dish cleaner. What is it? Dishwasher, like Gain or something like that, or Joy. But I don't know if it kills them or causes them to move. So I don't know. But I do know about it. Because my dad and my mom, and I know about damn ants because my dad. So I do my practice for him. Yeah. Let's see, what time do we do? 30, 15 more minutes?
Yeah, 7 days. But if you want longer,
Okay, yeah. Okay. Let me continue because someone's coming through. Interference. Oh, there we go. The fourth of the four thoughts is the consideration of the defects of samsara. Fourth, of all things of samsara, such as places, companions, pleasures, and acquisitions, continually torment me with the three sufferings. So our friend, it's saying our friends, pleasures, places, and the things we own cause us suffering. And there's a suffering of change. But I'll stick with what Rinpoche says here for a second. Some people are attached, for example, to particular places which they cannot bear to leave. Some people are attached to companions from which we cannot bear to be separated, but we lose our companions. I mean, the Buddha himself observed, I mean, that, you know, the end of every meeting is parting. We're generally attached to pleasant as opposed to unpleasant experiences. We are all attached to some kind of acquisition or possession. But all of these things, which we regard as so important and cherish so dearly, are ultimately of no use to us, because this is all predicated about the time of death, you know, between this life and the next. We cannot hold on to any of these things. We have no freedom, no control over what happens to us after our death. We will lose all these things to which we have become so attached and have cherished so dearly. At the time of our death, we will be propelled by our karma and not by our wishes. So it's interesting. At death, we lose all these things. And when we lose them in life, we just get pissed off and frustrated, right? Like when things don't go our way, we get frustrated. But in a sense, when things don't work out our way or we lose them, have a sense of loss while before death, like while we're alive, it's actually doing us a favor, because at death, there's just less to lose. Like one of the most interesting ironies of samsara is that we feel more secure about ourselves and better when things work out. But the fact is, they won't work out forever. And in fact, inevitably, they won't. And so, like, we've only kind of bought some time and potentially deceived ourselves. And that's one of the trickiest things, because, like, we start to think somehow it'll all work out. Like, we'll keep the things we want and the things that we've acquired and secured, the security around it, the self security around it. All of these conditions that we regard so worthy of cherishing are not only useless, but they actually torment us. Everything in samsara causes one of three kinds of suffering. And this is what Rinpoche I was about to say a minute ago. The things that are manifestly unpleasant or painful, such as experiences of the hell realms, agony, and a painful environment. The very ground that you live in the hell realms is red hot metal. But this could just also be things that we know of as pleasant and painful, like getting hurt, like when your body hurts or when you get sick. Like it's not pleasant. It's not nice. Even the things that we regard as pleasant bring about suffering. So, like I was saying, things that work out for us, that we think are nice, they bring about the suffering of change. When you experience a life that is basically pleasant, you still have to die and will, by contrast, suffer. So it's like the better things get, the worse they're going to get. That's the weird irony. Like if things were to be more kind of indeterminate, or not indeterminate, but less extreme, but we want things to be just grandiose. And if things are grandiose, then they're going to come crashing down at some point. All the things to which we are attached bring about suffering merely through their impermanence. This is the pervasive suffering. So, like suffering, the other thing is it's not just some things. The point of this all-pervasive suffering is that everything in our life, everything in our human experience is touched with this aspect that can easily become unpleasant. Let's put it that way, and will become unpleasant at some point, because we'll lose it if we're attached. If we're not attached, then it's not guaranteed to be unpleasant. If we're able to just say, okay, that's a lovely experience, and don't necessarily need to hold on to it, it's different. You may think, actually, I'll draw a distinction. I said hold on, which is very material. Expectation is what this really boils down to. We expect things to last materially, but also like the expectation is not a material thing. The material thing, like if I say I like this mala, I expect it to never have the string fall apart. Like, that's attachment to a thing, but the experience, the expectation is also, it's not the object, it's the issue. The issue is my expectations around it. I expect it is mine and no one will steal it. I expect it won't fall apart. I expect that it will appraise well, because it's a bodhisattva mala, they're expensive. Those kind of things. Do you know what I mean? Like, the expectation is what gets us. You may think that since you have this precious human body with its 18 special conditions, you are fortunate, like we talked about. And this is true, but you also contain vast periods of negative karma in your continuum that you have accumulated over a long period of time. If you do not purify or begin to purify this karma in this life, then definitely in your next life, having exhausted the meritorious karma through enjoying this opportunity and not using it, in your next life, you will definitely be reborn in the lower realms. So if we do have good karma right now to be born human, to encounter the Dharma, to, you could say, live safe and healthy. A lot of the things that we take for granted are actually signs of good karma. But if we burn it up now, like we use it and don't do anything good with this circumstance, then it won't arise again. It'll be, you could say, the cause and condition will have passed. There will already have been the result. There won't be another result from that. There'll be other results. Therefore, the text says that these things are like a feast given by an executioner to a prisoner being led to the execution ground. So, like, this would be the absurdity here would be like if you said, okay, you're on death row, you're going to die tomorrow, and someone's like, well, here's like a Nintendo Switch and $1 million and I don't know, whatever you want to eat and all the things that people like, whatever you like, and isn't that great? And you have to die tomorrow, but how well could you believe in that? If we know we have to die tomorrow, like right now, we would say like, I can't think about that. And yet, like, we do, like, we go and do all this stuff. We believe in it all. Like, we believe we can be a worldly success and I don't know, that our bodies will never get old or die, or that like we just keep winning in some way. And so it's so weird and foolish, but that's like what life is in a sense. Human life in a way. If someone were to give you a delightful meal and lavish entertainment and tell you, please enjoy this, because immediately after I'm going to kill you, you would not be able to enjoy it. You would not enjoy the meal or the entertainment. But actually, the nature of all things that we enjoy is just like that. It's an enjoyment that precipitates or immediately precedes disaster. You should be terrified by these things, like someone about to be executed. You should understand that these things have deceived you all along. And as long as you are fooled by them, they will continue to deceive you. Therefore, the text says, eradicating attachment, I will accomplish awakening with diligence. All of you who have eradicated a degree of attachment. Oh, now he's talking about the 3-year retreat a little. So my point on that, though, while Rinpoche is saying we should be terrified, the other thing is, I would say it in a sense like terrified of wrongdoing. But I'd also say we have the Dharma in our lives, like we are practicing, and I would say that we should delineate, like we were saying with samsara, and begin to do, with karma, and begin to do what virtue we can with the time we have, and avoid non-virtue with the time we have, is because our situation, it's interesting. Our situation, if we do nothing about it, is how he described. If we do something about it, it can change. It can become easier. Practice, that's the other thing. Whatever we do by habit, Shanti Deva says this, is whatever we do, the more we do it, the easier it becomes. So if we practice more virtue, it will become easier and easier to practice virtue, and it'll be more unfamiliar to us to practice non-virtue. So, well, we've got just two or three minutes, but if there's any questions or anything, I'd I'd be open to it. I kind of went a little fast, but I think it was good subject matter. I hope it's not too. Oh, hey, Bonnie, you're back from India.
I just had a comment about the insect. A reading that I did a long time ago with Pema Chodron. She had an infestation of some insects that she was tried multiple methods and couldn't and had to because of the health concern that she had. And what she said she did is she went to where the insects were and talked to them and said, I'm sorry, I have to do, in other words, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I'm sorry, but the health of my nuns and that and the people here are important, and you've got 24 hours to get out.
That's what I did too. I said, you get it. Tomorrow's the day. Please leave.
And then, and their karma, they could choose to leave or they could choose to stay, but she let them know that she was going to have to do it within 24 hours. And then she obviously was regretful for having had done it, but
Sure.
I thought that's been real helpful for me with some infestations.
Yeah, it's it's also an interesting thing too. A side point, I didn't want to forget it, is that like the karma we have with those close to us, like our family and loved ones, like there's the 5 actions of immediate consequence, like the most negative things. It's like one is to draw the blood of a Buddha, and one is to like kill one's own parents, these kind of things. And like it's significant because the people we share the most karma with, like our parents, our siblings, our lovers, our karmic energy is very tied up with each other. We've created a lot of virtue and non-virtue around each other, and like proximity and focus. And the people farther in our life, and beings farther in our life, they're still significant. I mean, there's no one that's not gonna. It's not that it's not, nothing can ever not be significant if every action has a result. It's just that way. But the ones that have the most like results are the beings that we have the most karma with. Like karma as an adjective, you could say. Well, that I don't want to get into that. Karma as an adjective, but yeah, but I appreciate you sharing that one, Bonnie, because yeah, I remember that in one of her books, I feel like. Yeah. And at least relating to it, like with some sense of like regret has more responsibility than telling ourselves that it has no impact, like, or that it doesn't matter. Like, I think this a lot around this. I thought it was really cool a few years ago. They had a thing like called Meatless Mondays, and a lot of people who were statedly not vegetarian would take Monday and just not eat meat. And I've often thought there was a lot of immaturity around vegetarians and non-vegetarians both. And I mean, I see it in American culture. I don't know this through the lens of other cultures, but like, who are people say, aha to each other a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and, or like, I don't give a damn, like kind of thing. And the issue is that like, we need to, when we do that, we're not seeing virtue clear. The idea is like rejoicing in virtue is seeing it clear. So if someone's doing less of something that we know is probably not a great idea, then it's like, great, but person doesn't have to be perfect for us to rejoice in them. And I think also one of the issues is like, if we, let's just say, judge or something like that, or if we like disregard that person or make some sort of statement on them, then it's like we distance ourselves from them as a relating, like a person that we relate with anyway. So it's like, and we also kind of turn away from seeing ourselves as like in this situation, like I was saying about my vegan friend, like, because like we're actually all also in this world creating cause and effect all the time. Good ones, probably a lot of bad ones, probably a lot of tuned out ones, ambivalent ones, ignorance, but yeah. Well, it's been really nice doing this for the last few months. I really like this group. I was actually in Southern California a week and a half ago, in Oxnard, and we went up to Santa Cruz and went to see some redwoods, and we took my son to Mystery Spot, if you guys have been there. It's kind of a tourist attraction with gravitational anomalies. So like to stand up straight, you're leaning, and if you lean, you're standing up straight, like kind of stuff. And yeah, it was pretty cool. But yeah, so I don't know. If you guys I don't know if you're planning, if you're rotating with other lamas like Lama Kathy or Lama Karma, but if you in the future, Jody or whoever's organizing things, if you want me to do this again, let me know. And you know, we can make time for it. So
Yeah, 100% we want you to come back. But
cool.
I'll send you a message.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate it, everybody, and maybe we'll dedicate the merit. Wow, it's interesting because also for some reason, some of the Dharma talks I've given this week have felt heavy, like very, very direct. And I hope none of it's freaky or anything. But I also say it because some of these things are important to consider. But on my side too, I don't really I'm not a defender of the faith. I think things in life speak for themselves, especially Buddha Dharma. And then the other thing is that I just don't think there's any real benefit in judging others. I think people find conscience and conscientiousness and consciousness on their own, and that's the only way to find it. It can't be enforced. Someone said once, you can't legislate goodwill. And I think it's true. So I think it's good to hear the Dharma, and then just as we can, like, try to do what we can, and know that it makes a difference. Don't doubt that, and don't doubt it in others. But that's where it starts, really. It's not important to necessarily, unless you're going to try to do something cold turkey or make good efforts. It's like, I'm just like you guys. I think when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche would say these kind of things, like he was, I was saying this to a different group. He was the kind of person that you'd see and you're like, you want to be better. And he would radiate goodness. You know what I mean? And like these kind of things, like he was very well a monastic and like a source of goodness in the world, like a nexus of it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm passing on teachings, but I'm on the path just like you guys. Whereas there's certain teachers you look at, you're like, man, is that like the Buddha? Is that the fruition? And yeah, I think it's fair, but I'm on the path just like you guys. So I don't want it to sound like I'm preaching at you. Just these are things to think about in our own way. And it sounds like we're doing it. So I hope everyone does good, creates good karma, and we'll dedicate the merit. O sonam de ye tamje zikpa ni topne nebe dranam pamje ne chega na chi balap chupa ye sibe sole rowa nyodro sho jamba bawo jita kempa dan kunzi sangpo de yang de jin de da kungi jesu daglo ching Gewa dida tanje rabdu no sanje kuson yebe jinla dang choni menju dembe jinla dang gendun miche dembe jinla ki shita no monlang drupa shok gyakun ninje rangshu karma ba gyakun trinle chidu karma ba gyakun duso wanjur karma ba Ogin rodo trenle shabden so duji leja jawe trenle ba karma baden dembe nimbo di jota kunkya kyabjing yumi che takpa rabel belwe trashi show. All right. So good seeing you all, and play it safe. And yeah, may we meet again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sue.
Appreciate it. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.